Everybody, welcome back to the Audiomo Podcast, episode 18. Hopefully the internet will be a little bit better and Dave and I can continue to see each other. Speaking of the man himself, how are you doing tonight, David?
Oh, pretty good. You know, it's been a long weekend, but I forgot to tell you this. I got a promotion at work. I got a new job. So moving over to a different team, came with some extra cash, which is always nice. And my wife got a new job at exactly the same time. She's starting up some new days and going back to work like more part-time than she was before. So it's a fresh new year with new stuff going on, you know? So pretty good, actually.
Oh, congratulations. And you had not told me that until just now. It's funny because every time before we start to film these podcasts, we shoot the shit for about 5 or 10 minutes. Like, what are we going to talk about? You didn't bring that up. I would have thought that would have been the first thing.
I would have thought too, but then you asked me how I was, and I was like, oh, wait, I'm actually good this time.
Negative Dave found something to be happy about.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of negative, let's talk about our first topic of the day. Earlier in this week, one of the bigger YouTubers, a guy who everybody knows, a lot of people are kind of polarized by him, Philip McKnight. I personally, for the most part, I don't mind him. I think he's pretty decent. He is what he is. I know you have your own opinions, but he made a video basically called Gibson Quality Control Still Sucks. And he ordered an R0, which is a custom shop model of a 1960. And basically the gist of it was he loved the way that it sounded. He loved the way that it played. But he was, at the end of the day, he decided he wanted to return the guitar. Now, I had no problems with kind of the majority of it. But one issue that I had was, I think this is kind of glaring too, because Phil owned a shop. And Phil knows he's not like an amateur when it comes to this stuff. He showed everybody the pictures of this guitar, specifically of that scratch on the back. So the fact that he was surprised when it came in that condition, I was kind of like, what? Like, you didn't see that? Like, you're going to spend, those are not cheap, dude. I'm not going to mention how much they are. They're a lot of money. Like, you're going to spend that much money to do this for YouTube or for yourself or whatever reason it is. You're not even going to check it out like that. Like, that was egregious. So I just thought that was kind of, I don't know, I thought that was kind of poor form. But, I mean, at the end of the day, I feel bad for the shop because they're the one they're gonna eat that return, basically, like that. Now they're gonna have to sell it for less. And I mean, it should be sold for less, and I'm not defending Gibson. They screwed up a few things on that guitar, but I don't know. I just wanted to bounce that off and see what you think about this.
Yeah, you know, it's tough. Like, so I think when we first were talking about this, I was kind of like, I think you're being a little harsh on him, but I don't know. I've been thinking about it more and more, and I agree with kind of the idea that it's like, so first off, right, it could have easily been that he didn't really look, right? Or that he missed it, he didn't see the scratch and whatever. And, you know, I don't know, that's bad on his part, but fine. You know, and personally, like if it was me, I kind of would have expected a scratch like that to be called out maybe in the listing, or maybe it should be B stock. Like it was a pretty bad scratch. I mean, it's kind of ridiculous to just put the pictures up and hope that whoever's buying it saw it on the pictures and is fine with it, you know, like without explicitly, and maybe it did, I don't know, maybe it said right in the description, like, you know, scratch on the back of the neck or something or whatever. But like, what I don't like about this is that he either made a mistake or did something knowingly and then turned it into a video for us all to, you know, watch and talk about or whatever. Like, I don't know. It's just, there is a little something skeevy about that kind of aspect of it, where it's like, if he missed it, or if he was like, you know, hey, I'm going to buy this guitar that has a scratch on it and then complain about it later, and then turned it into views. Like, I don't know. I don't feel great about that, but either way, I mean, I was definitely surprised at kind of how bad it was, you know, like the scratch sucked. He had mismatched pickup covers. He had like, you know, piece of a knob falling off, and it's like, you're right, these guitars are crazy expensive. And this doesn't feel like, you know, the new Gibson that we keep hearing about that's like got their shit under control. This feels like old Gibson.
I don't disagree with you. And I know that based on my opening statement there, people are going to be like, you're a Gibson apologist. I want to show you something that I showed Dave before we started. This right here, this is a tone knob from that Wildwood Les Paul. I was playing it earlier, and when I unplugged the guitar and I put it back into the rack, it fell, and I was like, what was that noise? And I looked, and sure shit, this is what it was. So, despite the fact that that guitar is flawless outside of that, I mean, to me, these aren't big problems. And the mismatched pickup covers, that's another thing. First of all, you see that in the listing. Second of all, yeah, it's bad on Gibson, but that's not a good enough reason to return an instrument of that
Yeah.
value. But I see where you're coming from too, though. Like, and this is where it gets cloudy. And I want to make one thing very clear again. If Gibson didn't send that guitar to that shop, whatever that shop was, with the scratch on it to begin with, then neither of us are making the devil's advocate for either Phil potentially screwing up, which in my opinion, I think that's what happened. I think he just didn't look close enough to see it.
Yeah, I agree.
Or, the shop not fully disclosing it. But then again, it depends on the shop, because there are some of these shops, like, he didn't get that from Wildwood. But if you go to Wildwood's website, like, everything's super high def, and then it's like a huge disclaimer. It's like, please review all of the pictures, and you can even download all of them in the highest definition, so you can really zoom in and see every little detail to avoid things like this, because they are such high-priced instruments.
Yeah.
But it just, the whole thing, it just kind of sucks. You know what I mean? Like, just to see that, and then just the title of it and everything like that, because to me, the meat and potatoes of that guitar, if you take away the scratch, which is inexcusable for Gibson to send out to begin with, but put that to a side for a second here. You take away the scratch, and you take away the fact that the little plastic on the sticker, on the tone knob, that was the thing that was coming off, and the mismatched pickup covers. He said the guitar played great, felt great. There was one other thing he said. What was it? He complained.
It was rolled fingerboard edges, which I do actually think, in the right circumstance, could be a problem. But he also, like, he did say it played great, right? Which makes me think it's not that big of a problem. But either way, I don't want to speculate about how the guitar was,
No, and I don't want to either. I'm just going off of what he said, because it seemed he was raving about, because you could see it. He's just like, this feels so good. This feels great. Like, this sounds great. And it did. It sounded really good. And then it was kind of like in the afterthoughts here, when he was doing his, like, my final thoughts, that's when he started to complain about the rolledness of the fingerboard. And to me, I would notice that straight away. Like, as soon as I feel a guitar, I know that. Like, that's not something that I would have to come back to like 10, 15 minutes later, or in post-production, and just kind of voice over that,
I agree. I did think that was a little bit weird, especially since he does that really great test where he does the, where he takes like the pantyhose and he goes over the edges to show how sharp the fretwork is. So he didn't do that. Maybe the expectation is he doesn't need to on a custom shop. I don't know. But yeah, it was a little bit weird that it's like, this is a point of practice for him when he does reviews. And then he just was sort of like, oh yeah, by the way, the fretboard is not great. Like, I don't know. Yeah.
And I think that's a valid complaint. Like, especially at this price point, like, you gotta, if you're expecting rolled fingerboard edges and that's what's promised to you, then they should come pretty damn well rolled for that kind of money. But I just thought it was interesting that he waited to say that and didn't notice it up front. Just like, I don't know, it's tough. And I'm somebody that I go over every guitar that I buy with a fine-tooth comb, and maybe I'm just judging this a little bit harsher, because not only do I make videos for YouTube, but I am so picky about guitars I buy, and I go out of my way to not make mistakes like that, because it would cost me money at the end of the day, because 99% of the time I'm reselling the guitar that I get in, so I have to know the exact kind of condition that the guitar is in before it ships. And then if there is a problem, I know who to blame, and that's the shipping company, and that's its own other, headache full of problems, so to speak. But I don't know. At the end of the day, it's just overall, take Phil out of the equation, take the shop out of the equation. It just sucks. I think about that other Gibson that we talked about a month ago. And what was it? An AS345. That was a custom shop, the semi-hollow body, where the bridge wasn't even close to aligned. And to me, that's so much worse, because Sweetwater also went through a 55-point inspection on that, took the pictures of that, and then still sold that guitar. That to me that's the lowest of the low that I've seen when it comes to Gibson's quality control and a company, selling the product. But it sucks that you really have to gamble. Luckily, I'm still fortunate. I haven't mysteriously found that there's some bleeding and binding that I didn't like, or the fingerboard edges weren't rolled up to my specification all this time later. Like, I'm still very happy with this guitar, despite the stupid tone knob that fell off. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, it's a tone knob. It is what it is.
Yeah, I get you. And I think regardless of the video that he posted and everything too, I definitely feel like for me, when I first watched the video, my reaction is like, oh shit, Gibson's back to their old ways. That being said, as much shit as we talked about Gibson, I haven't played any of their new ones either, so I haven't experienced any of that firsthand. But I really, was kind of rooting for them to turn things around, and I don't know, doesn't seem like a good showing. Although honestly, at any point, like, you kind of can't blame somebody for spending that kind of money on a guitar and sending it back when you don't love it, because you have to. It's just too much money to not be ecstatic about everything.
I don't disagree. I mean, what is that thing? $5,000, $6,000? You have to do it unless you really are rolling in the money and you love the way that it plays, like really, really love the way that it plays and it sounds and it really connects with you. You can get past little things like that if that's the case. But if not, then you have the opportunity to return it. I do understand it. Again, I feel for the shop to an extent because, at the end of the day, Gibson's going to be just fine. A piece of inventory is gone. It's no problem for them. It's the shop now who's going to have to sell that at a severe discount. Although maybe they'll be able to sell it for a little more because they'll be like, this is the Phil McKnight guitar.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
But, and you know what's really interesting too is I'm so spoiled. The only other Gibson I ever really wanted was 335. And the fact that this Japanese company, this 77 guitar, I'm not going to talk about it too much, but the fact that this guitar came in and is flawless and is amazing, and now that it has the Fralins in it, it's everything I could ever want. I don't have to go down this route again, so I'm very fortunate. But it's a real roll of the dice, and this is another example of, there are a lot of valid complaints with it. So yeah, I guess just it's tough, and that's the hardest part about Gibsons is they're never in stock. And the only way to be sure if you're going to love one and it's not going to have these problems is to try it first. So it's like chicken or the egg, or do you love the company enough to gamble, or do you gas hard enough for it that you want to gamble on it like Phil did?
Yeah, and I mean, I think that's maybe what's disappointing to me about the custom shop is I feel like that's kind of sort of the point of the custom shop, right? Like you talk about like COVID times or whatever, and maybe it's difficult to get out to a shop and play stuff, and inventory's kind of all over the place. So even if you can make it out, like maybe they don't have what you're looking for, and maybe you do have to kind of buy some stuff sight unseen. But like a custom shop back in the day too, like you're not going and playing custom shops usually before you order them from them. So, like the part of their guarantee is that this guitar is high quality enough that you don't have to worry about it. So it's disappointing that even at that level that, that we're seeing issues of some kind, right? I mean, that's the whole part of their allure is that it's like, I'm spending $5,000 or more on a guitar and I expect it to be perfect when it shows up.
I agree 100%. And it's bullshit that they still can't live up to that. So I think the way that I see it, I get in a lot of guitars. With Gibsons, they're really hit or they're really miss. And unfortunately, even though I think that they have gotten better, and I say that because some of the worst Gibsons I played were 2016 through 18. Oh, some of those were the real dogs. I'm not even going to count 2015. That year never happened. Yeah, it's just unfortunate, but I mean, at the end of the day, if you want it bad enough, you're gonna take the gamble. And I'm fortunate in my circumstance, but I empathize with Phil, and I actually understand his decision to want to return it. It's just, it sucks that it even comes to this point because, like you said, that much money into a guitar, you shouldn't have a thing to worry about. But let's leave it at that because I feel like we're just going to keep repeating ourselves if we go on any further. There's something very exciting going on with you right now, David. You started to tell me about it. Now, this studio that we're seeing you in right now, that's not going to be kind of where you're at for the long term here. Why don't you explain, just, you don't need to get into too much detail about, but explain what's going on and what your plans are for the future and your dilemma, your first world problem of the day.
Well, so my dilemma is that at some point we're going to be moving out of this house, and we're actually moving back into the house I grew up in, which is very close to here, but is much bigger, is much nicer. It'll give me some room to grow with the family. But the downstairs has an in-law suite built in, so it's a full apartment in the basement. We've got 2 small bedrooms, a living room, a kitchen area, and some like little small mudroom walkway kind of thing. And that's becoming the new studio. And I've got this kind of weird, as you said, first world problem of I've never designed a studio that's been more than one room, like for myself, right? So I'm left with all of these endless possibilities, and I have no idea what to do with them. Not really. I have some idea with what I want to do with them, but it poses this interesting question of like, I've got 3 rooms, kind of, not endless budget, but I'm going to be there a while. So I'm going to put some money into it to make it, the space I really want it to be. So what do I do with 3 rooms? What would you do with 3 rooms?
Well, first of all, you need a really solid control room. How big are the rooms in relation to each other? Obviously, I'm going to guess the one room that's going to be your live room is probably significantly bigger than the other 2.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. The 2 bedrooms are fairly small. It's definitely a small. It's an apartment that was a basement, right? So it's definitely small. It's not ridiculously small, but the bedrooms are enough for maybe like a queen size bed, a dresser, and 2 side tables kind of size. And there's 2 of those, and then the what will probably end up being the live room was the living room. It's got like a bump out kind of den area that's going to be perfect for drums, and then it's fairly open outside of that.
Okay. So, if there's not a big discrepancy in size between the secondary rooms, the first room solves itself. That's the no-brainer here. You have basically your entire foundation for the control room right in front of you right now. The only thing that I would want to be curious about here, how are you going to do this as far as the console goes? Are you still going to be doing everything digital, or are you going to go for something maybe, a little bit higher end and then really install like a nice snake and do things that way? What are you thinking in terms of the analog and the digital setup here?
Yeah, so I've thought about this a few times. And so I've had over the years, I've tried to, and I think we've actually even talked about this, I've tried to get like a digital workstation kind of like in my workflow, right? Like I've had a few different little pieces of hardware with faders and, knobs and stuff. And actually right now I have, obviously you can't see it, but I have a small touch screen in front of me where I was trying to do like a cheapo Raven, and I always end up going back to the mouse. Like at this point, I've just spent so much time into it. It's always faster for me to do it with a mouse. So I don't know if I would go back to doing, any kind of like board of, but that being said, I did think about, there was a small studio, we did some work out in Massachusetts that had, they were using the PreSonus stuff that's meant for live, but they were using it as a like in studio solution. And what I really did like about that was the data over Ethernet, and they had like those little breakout boxes in the live room where they could have, every musician had like their own little box that they could do their own separate mixes for headphones and stuff on, and that was really cool. So I could definitely see something like that being useful. But I mean, to be honest, I probably will just end up keeping this particular mixing setup in a room. I just don't. I don't have any like dire need for analog gear. I'm definitely going to snake out of the room into the live room, and I'll have all my routing set up like, easy and, by the kit and in the room and separate. But I don't know that I every time I've tried to put faders in my workflow, I just end up getting frustrated by them and taking them out. So
that's so strange. I'm so opposite. I hate the mouse. I love faders. I just can't. I can't connect with it in the same way when I'm using a mouse. And I understand for workflow, and especially I think a lot of it has to do with you do a lot more parameter tweaking and stuff like that, like after the fact. And I'm more of I'll use the faders in a way where I use them to track and to really measure things out when I'm tracking. So for me, the faders are a lot easier than the mouse in that aspect. So if I was doing it, this is not going to be what you're going to do. But if I was doing this, I would get myself one of those Tofts, maybe. One of those nice little boards. Or if I really had money, and I don't, I would get one of those Neves that I think it has 4 or 6 inputs. I would have that as like my main line. And then I would, because those also have the built-in faders and a lot of control in those as well. It's very compact, but I think they're like $4,000 to $8,000 depending on the model you get. And then There's other ways that you can implement something like an ADAT interface to give me the extra eight extra inputs I would need to, accomplish anything else I would want to accomplish. But if I were to do that, that kind of takes away my need for spending a lot on external preamps for the most part. You know what I mean? Because if they're already in the console, everything's integrated really well. You're getting really good conversion. You're getting no latency because it's all in one. To me, that would be the route I would go with it. But given what you've said and everything like that, obviously the live room is the live room. You're going to kind of, upgrade here and there the parts that you have for the control room, and maybe throw in a few more rack mount modules or compressors or things like that. I don't think you will, though, because you seem to really like what you have.
Yeah, I have a couple, and they're all in the desk, and I just don't have them hooked up because, again, it's just like I'll like throw them in, and then it takes me so long to like get them up and running and set the way I want them to that it just ends up, I don't know. They're not like amazing, Maybe if they were amazing, I would do it more often, but they're just like, budget compressors and limiters and stuff, and it's like I have a billion of those in Pro Tools or whatever, and they already sound fantastic. So it's just hard for me to be like, okay, I'm gonna go get cables and I'm gonna route inserts for outboard gear that's gonna sound like fine. You know what I mean? I would like to get some. Honestly, I would like to get some nice preamps because I don't mind the Focusrite stuff. I think it's fine, but none of it's like amazing. It would be nice to at least have a couple to like dedicate to some vocal stuff. Which would be cool. And maybe a nicer compressor would be good, at least for like bass tracking and stuff. But I probably won't go too heavy on the outboard gear, mostly because I have it and I barely use it now. But I did actually think about grabbing one of the SSL digital mixers at 1.2 because I think that they actually come with preamps as well, and I thought that would be like a good solution to that. And I think they do the 8, and it's pretty large, and they're a little over $1,000, which doesn't seem like insane for what you're getting. You know what I mean?
You're not talking about the Nucleus.
It's the little one. Let me look it up real quick.
While you're looking that up, I will say I considered the Nucleus when I was doing my studio build in San Diego. I had 2 rooms, but the one room was basically a closet. It barely fit in a twin bed and a very, very narrow desk. I had my outboard gear next to that, and it was a very eye-opening experience in a few ways as far as routing things and stuff like that. But I thought the Nucleus would be a perfect solution, but it only has the 2 preamps on it. And then getting it to work with other things nicely, at the time at least, was a no-go. So I thought that would have been better if I was doing more electronic music, which clearly, that wasn't the case.
It's the UF8, which I don't think it has. I don't think it has preamps. I think it's just a DAW controller.
I was gonna say that's too cheap for an SSL to have preamps and a control surface for $1,000. That's too cheap.
Let me see. Yeah, let me see this. So the new Nucleus, they have the 2 now. I don't know how much different that is, but either way. But we'll move past the digital control surface. Because I could just keep going down this rabbit hole. I would like to try it again. And so, do you know who Andrew Masters is? Have you seen him? Yeah, so he's got a cool setup where I actually think he has the UF8 or maybe one of the SSL digitals, but he basically centered his workstation around it. So his desk is that, and then he has the computer kind of like off to the side. And I don't know, I feel like in theory that seems like a really good idea. Like it would really just get you to focus in on the mix and like what you're doing. But I also feel like, am I then like back and forth with the computer every time I pull up like plugins and stuff? I don't know, it just feels like it would be a huge workflow change. You know what I mean?
You would hate it.
I think I would.
You would hate it. You would go 5 minutes and be like, fuck this. I'm moving.
But don't
the
you think
computer
like
back.
that's the level of commitment you need to make that kind of workflow change?
Yes, but you won't do it.
Yeah, I probably won't.
Yeah, you're just lying to me. You're lying to yourself. It's fun in theory, but there's no chance in hell you're going to do that. I know you. There's no way you're going to do that. So let's talk about the third room. What I would do with that, that's simple. I make it a vocal booth and an ISO booth with a few separate guitar cabinets that I can mic up. And then you can kind of do really ambient or stereo kind of tracking with microphones and with guitar parts and stuff like that. It's pretty no-brainer. But I would want to have the main room also be available depending on who's coming in to do vocals. Somebody can come in and do that, have a little bit more air in it, but then if you want something that's a little bit more focused and a little bit tighter, then you can obviously use the smaller suite.
Yeah. I think that's kind of where I was leaning to. I'm trying to figure out what I want to do as far as like, routing amps and stuff, like keeping all the heads in the main mix room and then routing that to the other room so I can do the ISO cab thing and switch. I really want to grab one of those switcher load boxes, but they're just like way too much money for what they're doing, but yeah, there's that to think through. And then the other thing I've been trying to think through is what I want to do about like, communicating between the rooms. Everybody likes the idea of like having the big window between, but that's so much extra work, and I feel like I can maybe get away with doing something with cameras and TVs and like kind of faux do it, where you have a TV that's a camera into the mix room and a TV that's a camera into the live room. But I don't know. There's a lot of nuances to figure out with it. I don't want to put a window between the rooms, right? I know there's already going to be bleed. So I'm trying to cut down on it as much as possible. We'll see.
I put the window between the rooms.
Yeah, but have you ever actually done that, man? Like you got to do the double pane with the.
I have. I did it once. And you know what? I do it again.
Yeah.
I do it again. It's something about it, man. You know what I think it is? I think it makes you feel like you're in a real recording studio, not a project studio, not at your house. That little difference right there is paramount. And does it do anything for the tone? Does it do anything for the performance? Maybe not. But that feel, it makes it feel so much more professional when you walk in and you see that. And then when you're actually sitting in the workflow, or if you're the one that's performing and somebody else is behind a desk, to have that ability to just kind of straight up, no awkwardness, no like I'm looking at this monitor, I'm looking at this camera, how are things going? I'm on like CCTV. Dude, it's a pain in the ass. I'm not making it sound like it's easy, but I do it.
I think it's fair. It's just one, it's going to be a little bit difficult with the way that the room is set up to maybe make it work. And I don't think I could explain that without like literally pulling up a, floor plan. But I'm like, my main thing is like, I'm not pulling apart the walls to stuff them with insulation. So I think we're going to do Faberwall, and that'll be on, both the inside of the live room and the inside of the mixing room. Right. So I think that'll do a decent amount. But like I'm trying not to make it really difficult on myself to make, have like the rooms be separated in any way. So I was hoping to avoid it, but I think you're probably right that it's just the cool thing to do. So hopefully I don't find out that the glass is like ludicrously expensive, which I'm absolutely sure it is, but yeah.
I don't know how much it is now, but I remember having severe sticker shock when I did it all those years ago, being like, oh, that wasn't what I was expecting. But
yeah.
And we had it custom made, so
yeah. Well, I'll do whatever I can to keep it reasonable, but I'm pretty excited about the idea, and I've got enough time now before we get in over there that I can really plan out what I want to do. So I'm sure as I discover more things I can do in there, we'll keep bringing it up on the podcast, but it's gonna be cool, and maybe even I'll take some video and maybe we can do a studio build montage or something.
That would be fun, as long as I can play like Karate Kid style montage music behind it, and then just have you track some freaking terrible vocals, like just like really 80s behind it. We could do that, like South Park style. But one last question I have for you: with the live room, the floor. A lot of people overlook the floor. Do you have any plans for it? Is it carpeted? Is it hardwood? Is it vinyl already? What's the status of that?
I believe it's the click together hardwood stuff, which it's not ideal, but it at least is similar to hardwood. I am a personal believer of all hardwood and put down carpets. I feel like it feels way more natural to me. Like there's something there's something in my brain that like wants some sort of reflection from the floor. Like I'm all for covering as much of the walls with absorption material as possible, but I feel like the floor needs to be something snappy that I can cover up if it's a problem, you know?
Yes. Good.
Yeah.
As long as you're not just going to be fully carpeting it on, vinyl, I think we're going to be just fine here.
Yeah, no way. Yeah. So I'm going to do as much of the Fabri-Wall as possible, I think, in all of the rooms, but I'm definitely going to leave the floors hardwood. And then we've got drop ceilings, so I got to figure out how to deal with that too. I think I'm just going to stuff them full of safe and sound, but that's not going to be fun. But yeah,
that's going to suck.
Yes, it's going to suck. I don't think there's really anything else I can do about it.
There's not. It's especially because you're telling me it's at the bottom, so it's like, oh, yeah, have fun.
But I have to make it so that, like, if I'm playing drums, my entire family doesn't want to kill me, so.
Oh, they're going to want to kill you regardless. Let's not be silly about this, Dave.
Yeah. Well, either way, it's going to be exciting, and I'll definitely keep you updated, and we'll keep bouncing some ideas. And if anybody has any like cool things I should check out before I start, really deep diving into it, please like drop a link. Give me some suggestions. What would you do with a 3-room studio?
Be like, I just want a 3-room house. We're going to get a lot of those comments, and you're going to sound like a spoiled fucking brat.
I am a spoiled fucking brat.
All right, so there's one last thing I wanted to mention. I didn't mention I wanted to mention this to you. I said mention a lot there. But today's video, I answered a question that was initially asked to you and to my wife. And it's a regular viewer, and they wanted to know any tips for somebody who's not really confident with their voice, and they want to go out and start playing live. So Dave, I answered it my way, and it was a lot of like what not to do. So What do you have for that?
So I think there's a couple things to start with, right? So first thing is just accepting your limitations and learning how to work within them, I think is the first, right? Like I have a really terrible range, and it's always been a weak point of mine. And I don't have fantastic stamina. So I can't really do anything about the range. I can work on the stamina, right? So stamina is mostly just practice, just doing it, and I'm definitely guilty of not doing that enough. But the more you work on it, the better you get with it, right? Range you can't do much about, but that being said, there's a lot of crappy range singers out there, right? I mean, it's really about finding a sweet spot and kind of making it work for you. So back when I was younger, I did a lot of art, kind of on the illustration side and stuff. And a lot, I think of the same kind of, sort of advice kind of works in both of those scenarios where it's really more about finding a style, I think, than it is about, trying to like get super confident and like, do all these things and go push yourself. Like obviously you do need to push yourself and you do need to practice and work on it, but you also don't need to like, be a hair metal singer if you want to sing, alt rock, right? Like if you have a weak voice and you don't have a super high range, like there are plenty of singers that make that work for them, right? Like, even like Kurt Cobain's a crappy singer, but he like figured out what worked really well for him, right? And he sat in that range and he sang the notes that worked and he did them in a crappy way that sounded great over what he was doing, right? So it's about finding your area and really kind of honing that in. And then I think, the other thing that I would recommend that I think probably most people won't say is get some way to record yourself and do it until you're okay listening to yourself. And that's going to take a really long time, but you'll get comfortable doing it, right? Like you'll at least have to put in the time to get to that point. And when you get to the point where you can comfortably record yourself and listen back and not feel uncomfortable, you're at least most of the way there to being able to do it in front of other people.
Fair enough. I think that's all really valid. I think the most important thing that you said was something that I actually learned from you, and that is figuring out what your range is. If you don't know that, and you can't even kind of, really know your limitations in that aspect, because that is it's one thing to be like, oh, I know my limits. I can't hit high note or I can't hit low note. It's like, no, you need to really understand how this works from a musical sense here, knowing how many octaves can you hit, what is your range, are you stuck on one octave? And that's fine. Like you said, there are a lot of people who have made that work and made one hell of a career doing it and have had some awesome songs. So it's not the end of the world, but the faster that you can figure that out, then you can really like refine it and make it your own. I would rather be a master of just like one thing than just like mediocre at a bunch of things. If that was like my main goal as a singer, you know what I mean?
Sure, yeah. And I mean, I'm not saying like, aspire to be amazing at one thing. Like some people are lucky enough that they have those kinds of voices that they can hit all genres. They can hit multiple ranges. They can do, multiple things. And that's awesome if you're that person and you can work and stretch and be that person. But, people who are usually uncomfortable with singing, it's because they don't feel like they're that person, right? And so there is where I think it's important to really go like, okay, I can sing from, B to F, and that's all I got in a 2-octave range. And then, work around that, right? Like every Metallica song's from either like D to E flat because James only sounds good in those 3 keys, like, so it's about finding the comfort, making it work, and then working on it, right? Like don't use that as a crutch, but know that if you have limitations, they're not stopping you from being a confident and good singer. They're just stopping you from maybe doing your best in certain places, right? So, I definitely think it's about work first, but you can work efficiently, right? Don't practice a bunch of stuff that is uncomfortable for you that you're never going to get to. Practice stuff that works for your range and for your style and what you want to do.
You're making me feel really stupid right now because when I get to sit and I have a lot of fun with guitar, one thing I like to do, I like to play really sloppily along with some insanely technical Japanese metal. And you would never picture this. Like if you watch my channel, you'd be like, that is like the last thing that you could picture me doing. But I do that. And I can make it through about like 80% of it, 85% of some of these songs. But that last 15% is like in a different universe. And instead of me actually sitting and really harnessing the time and the effort that I know it's going to take to do it, I'm just like, I'm sloppily. I'm not putting this on YouTube anyway, because if I did, I'd get slammed for it. I know how the comment sections work, but I still have fun doing it. But it's a funny kind of like parallel to doing the same thing. You know what I mean? Just like stretching, but then like it's one thing to stretch, but it's another thing to like stretch and like actively keep trying to get there through technique and through practice. That's my point.
And I mean, obviously, I think it's obvious that there's a big difference between guitar and vocals, right? Like, I'm sorry, Jim, to break this to you, but you're never going to sing Mariah Carey songs, like.
No, you're actually dead wrong with that. I sing that every time Christmas comes along. You know why? Because my wife fucking hates that song. The All I Want for Christmas. Like, if there's a song that comes on where I can see like the hair stand up in anger on my wife, it's Mariah Carey Christmas. Oh my God, she hates it. So and Taylor Swift is the same way. If Taylor Swift comes on, it's like, so I will with pride sing those songs only to get under her skin a little bit because it's funny to me.
Yeah. Well, my point is you're never going to accurately sing Mariah Carey songs. Yeah. But the difference is like if you wanted to sit down and learn Japanese power metal and you spent a year playing Japanese power metal, you could play Japanese power metal. But if you sing every day for the rest of your life, try to sing Mariah Carey songs, you're not going to be able to hit those high notes. So my point is work efficiently, not just hard, and pick your lane, I guess.
I am so tempted to try and learn how to sing Mariah Carey.
If you can, and you prove me wrong, like one, you'll have an amazing career doing something wildly different than this, which, awesome. But I want to see it, record it,
Oh man, that would be freaking hilarious. Oh yeah, no, just even just like in a mocking way, like not to mock her, but like to mock myself trying to do it would be a very interesting video. But I doubt I'll do that. I have never sung on this channel, and I don't see that changing anytime soon. But
I've heard you sing. It's not that bad. I know. You're your own worst critic here, but I think you could get away with it. And one of these days, when you finish the album and you have some tracks on it, you'll have to do some vocal work, and we'll have to put it up, or you can send it my way and I'll tell you if it's worthy of being on the channel.
Well, you're gonna lie to me, because either way you're gonna be like, it's great, this is fine, who cares?
Yeah. When have I ever lied about something being bad?
Never. Actually, no, that's not true. When you were younger, much younger, and maybe not as cynical at Dave. You were still cynical, Dave, but maybe you were just happy boozing. But I remember specific times when people would be playing their stuff in class and you would lie. You would say, "Oh, that was pretty good," or that wasn't bad. "Oh, I really like that." And then afterwards, you'd be like, "It was fucking garbage." And I'm like, "I know." I'm like, "So why'd you say it was good?"
All right, you got me there. You got me there.
So maybe you've just grown into just not caring anymore.
Yes. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
Yeah, well, it's always a pleasure as far as looking back on how we've grown or not grown in certain aspects of our lives.
I don't know that was positive growth, but it's growth nonetheless. Yeah.
No, I would say it's positive, and I think it's important to be honest. I think that's the foundation of everything that this channel is built on, is to just be blatant. Even if I'm wrong, I'll wear it on my shoulder, dude. Like, it is what it is. I just don't care. Like, I just don't see the point in lying about things.
I agree. And we definitely are wrong sometimes.
Oh, totally. We get corrected a lot.
Yeah. But yes, I do think I think we've grown into, at least we think we are wise old men who can tell people when stuff sucks. And I don't have time to lie anymore. So there you go. Now you know. If you send me some videos of you singing, I will tell you if it sucks.
Yeah, well, you're not going to get videos of me singing. You'll get actual audio files, Dave.
Yeah.
That's how this works.
You're right. And then I can tune them. And then, even if it does suck, it'll be like, hey, at least it's something.
We're going to go down a whole can of worms, because I could talk about this specific topic and me singing and all of that for a long time. Where, you know what? I'll save that for next week, because actually, I Googled something today. This is where I'm going to leave this on. Then we'll wrap this up. I Googled something today because I had an idea for a series. And that was, what if I actually went to a vocal teacher and documented all of it? What if I started and I was just like, this is what I sound like now. Just whatever. It is what it is. Like, and it's like you said, like, I know I'm not terrible. I know I could carry. I've done it before. And when we were in Capricorn, and I got sent into the studio, which was the thumbnail. You could see my face. I was not happy about it. I was put on the spot. I hadn't sung in like a year. And they're like, yeah, we need you to do backups for this. He kept being like, why don't you sing this part too? Why don't you sing that part too? And the mix came back, and it was just like, you could hear me being almost a little bit louder than the main take in some of it. And I'm just laughing to myself. I'm like, oh man. I'm like, it's obviously, it's not terrible. It's just, I don't love it. So I think it would be fun maybe to document, like, what happens if you take it seriously as somebody who's casually kind of done it or been forced in a position to do it. Like, what kind of results can you really get? So what do you think? Should I do it?
I definitely think it's an interesting idea, because, I mean, you see, like, singing is such an interesting thing to document, because it's not as quantitative, I think, as like guitar is, right? Like, if I sit down and I practice scales every day, at a certain point, like, I'm going to be faster at playing scales, right? But like, the voice is so organic in a way that you can't measure that way. So I definitely think the idea is interesting to go, like, what do you get out of it? My only concern would be, like, I've had a lot of vocal teachers over the years, and like some of them suck and some of them are good, and it's different in a way that, like, if I sit down and I keep playing guitar, I eventually will be better at something on the guitar, but like, you can go the wrong way with vocals. And not even so much the wrong way, but like, it's very easy to learn nothing from a teacher that's not good, so I don't know. Yeah. I think if you could find the right person and do it, it'd be super interesting to see, especially if you're coming from, like, the everyman position, because you definitely, plenty of, vocal based channels that do vocal based things, right? They're already good. So it's like, I don't really care what they're getting out of it, right? They're already good. But yeah, if you're just like, I'm a guy, I kind of know how to sing, and, I play other instruments, like, how much better can I get? Super cool. Yeah. What a neat idea.
I think I'd be able to do it. And I mean, the other thing that is, like, what do I have to lose? Say that the worst case scenario happens and this teacher sucks and I learn some terrible habits and I get way worse than I even am right now. I still play guitar, baby. I'm good. I don't got to do a damn thing with it. Like, I'm not relying on it. It's not my bread and butter. So it's like, it's a risk I'm willing to take.
I think it's a good one. Yeah.
Yeah. On that note, we'll address this more later on a further podcast. I'll reach out. I'll make some phone calls this week and we'll see what's up. Hopefully I don't know. We'll see who it is. We'll see who the teachers end up being. One of them looked appealing, and won't know until I talk. But you got anything else for tonight, Dave?
I don't. That about wraps it, I think, for me.
All right, and just like we said, you guys don't know this. We wanted to talk about 2 things tonight, and we ended up talking about like 5. So that's just it's the nature of this. What are we going to talk about? We have nothing to talk about. Yeah, and then an hour goes by, and here we are, the same place we are at the end of every single Sunday night when we film this. So thank you guys for watching. If you can leave a like if you made it this far, we really would appreciate it. Subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take it easy, everybody.